Hello everybody and welcome to the second episode of the Dwarf Fortress tutorial videos. I emphasize that because I've had some questions about which is the tutorial and which is the Let's Play, and I'm going to be splitting those up separately. Just because I kind of want the people who are watching the tutorials to have a little bit more basic knowledge so I don't have to explain as much as I do it. So this will be part of the official tutorial series, just to get that out of the way. In this video, I will be continuing on the explanations that I left off in the last video. In the last video, we started with getting the game running and starting out where we want to go, choosing what looks good, temperature-wise, mineral-wise, and all that we could see from the start. So, now that we've done that, we've chosen our spot. Now, I've done a little bit of work ahead of time, just so I can have some stuff to show off later. But when you get here, the kind of site you'll be seeing is one more similar to this. Like I said, it'll look a little bit more something like this. This is a little bit more kind of an unwieldy interface, so you're going to have to get used to it over time. So once we start with this, we're going to hit tab twice, removing that little bit of map on the side, and then we're going to look at what we have. As we can see, it's a little bit hard to tell what everything is. So something that you might want to get into the habit of, if you don't know what it is, you're going to want to pause the game with the space bar. And as you can see on the side, there's a button that says K, look around. So we're going to hit K, look around, and we're going to be able to move the little yellow X cursor with the arrow keys over whatever we want to learn about. And it won't give us an in-depth, uberly omega detail about it, but it will give us a little bit about it, or enough about it to infer whatever we need. So let's move around so we can see this is an alder tree, this is our dwarf, here's our wagon, it's a dog, horse, and all that. So that should be easy enough to figure out what is around the world to start with. You might need to take a bit of time to do that, just kind of get used to everything. And up here is water. It says open space, but the water is down there. All sorts of different types of grass. If you don't know, if it looks green when you're on the interface, it's probably grass. Purple moor grass, yes. Brush is grass. Sawgrass. There's a lot of different types of grasses. So and grass, it really doesn't matter about. Like, you might be like, is there any benefit to this grass? No, there's not. There really isn't. Now, of course, if you go to an area and it says like evil death grass of Satan, and you're like, is there any... Yeah, there's probably something bad around to make that happen. So, that might be a bit different, but that's probably one of the only cases that it would be such. Now, besides that, we're going to look at the interface as it is now, so we can kind of get into the game. As you can see, there are many different buttons that you can press at this point. You can hit A, B, C, D, K, M, N. You can hit just about every button on the keyboard and it would do something at this point. But we'll go through this and explain what each one does. A is view announcements. It basically lets you see, we have no recent announcement, but basically lets you see what is going on. Has it just turned summer, winter, fall, this? Is your dwarves being attacked? Can your dwarves not do something? Is something going wrong? Is something going right? Has someone done something very good? Has someone done something very bad? If it's important, it would deserve an announcement, it would come up there. 9 times out of 10, it's just going to be your dwarves spamming, I can't do this, why? I can't do this, why? Should I kill this thing? I think I should kill it. I think it's killing me. I think it's killing me, I'm dead. Normally what your announcements are going to be filled with. Now, it's good to go through it if you see something's going wrong and you want to figure out what's happening. And from the announcement, you can also zoom into an area that it's talking about. But for now, we don't have any, so we can't exactly show that off. Now, in the other world that I've got loaded up, we will be able to show that off, but that's what that world's for. This one's just to show off the interface in the clean world. Second one is B for buildings. Buildings is complicated, because it's not always specifically what you can build, but what needs to be built. And like I said, it's complicated. Yeah, it really is. From the buildings menu, you can build stuff that you can build in the buildings menu. It does work like that, and it gets really done really quickly. C is view civilizations, which basically lets you see what kind of relationship you have with those people that you've met. Has a human caravan come and you piss them off? Well, if you go to view civilizations, you'll see if you're at war with them. has a goblin caravan come. And you realized, hey wait, that's not a goblin caravan, my people are getting their face eaten. Let's see if we're at war with them. Oh wait, we always are at war with them. Those elves have come, and god darn those skinny little elves, I think I want to beat the fuck out of them, but I don't know if I'll go to war with them. Well, go to view civilizations to see what they're about. That's one I won't be able to show off, but it's one that it's hard to show off unless you've done something important. So it's not one that's really important right now. D is designations. Designations is very important. It's a menu that you're going to be spending 90% of your time in. It's where you chop down trees, it's where you mine, it's where you make staircases when you're going down, or up, or left, or right, wherever you're going, it's probably what you're going to be using the most. Now that said, I'll be showing that off later. Right now I'm just going through each one. K is for look around, which we've explained, lets you look at stuff specifically, to look at its name, and to get some basic general info. Like if we hit K and then go over this horse, and hit enter to view, you can see this is a large hoofed maned herbivore. They can run swiftly, and many are domesticated as steeds. And it gives more information about it being skinny, gigantic, chocolate, whatever else about it. I said it gives you some basic information. Not always everything, but usually more than enough to figure out what it is. M is for military. Basically lets you bring up a screen to create squads, create schedules, uniforms, whatever you need for that. And that's going to be something that's going to need its own video later on. It's not something I can explain now within its own video. Military is something that needs its own video. That being said, you can probably infer what you need basically, but to get the full depth of it, of what you can do with it, we're going to need some time to explain that, because a lot of it isn't set in stone and has to be set up by you, and it doesn't tell you how by that. Moving on, we have N for points, routes, notes. Basically just lets you set up stuff for you to know yourself later, like notes. I mean, it's like a post-it note. You can kind of place it somewhere, and then you'll see it when you go into that menu. You're like, huh, what did I put this for? Opening this door lets loose an army of evil insects. I don't think I'm going to open that door. I'm glad I reminded myself. Stuff like that. W is for define burrows. A burrow is something that when you set it up, all the dwarves that you assign to it will go to immediately. Doesn't sound very useful until you realize you can use it at any time during any situation. If you have a bunch of dwarves who are outside and you don't want them, and you don't want to have to go through every single one to stop their jobs, you can set up a burrow, have them all put in it, and they'll all instantly run to it. They'll drop almost anything they're doing that isn't life-threatening to get to it. And if it is life-threatening, chances are they'll try to bring it with them to complete at the burrow. It's good for just getting them out of sticky situations or getting them out of areas they shouldn't be in. And with good use of burrows, you can probably save them from more stuff than you think worth the time and effort. P is for stockpiles. Stockpiles we're going to explain in a minute. Stockpiles are basically where you tell your dwarves to put stuff. If you chop down a bunch of trees, they're just going to leave the wood lying around until you tell them where to put it. That's what the stockpile's for. Set up a wood stockpile, they'll pick up all the wood, take it over there, drop it off. That's good. Another thing about stockpiles is if it's a food stockpile, any food on it will not decay. Why is that important? Food doesn't decay. It's very important. Now, rodents can still get into it, vermin can still get into it, but that's what we get cats for, right? Yeah, cats es numero uno in Brazil. Stockpiles, good. Set building tasks and preferences, Q. This is another important one that you'll be spending a lot of time in. Not as much as designations, but one that is very important and will show off in a minute. Show off in full at least. It basically lets you tell what building to do what. If you set up a workshop, you can tell with the Q menu what to build or to destroy it or to do whatever with it. Now R is for view rooms and building. This is a complicated menu that I don't really use a lot, and you might find more use out of it than I do. Let's hit Shift R. We don't have any rooms except the wagon, but that's just for now. If you have a lot of rooms, you can basically go through it, get the value of the room, find whatever's in the room, see who's the owner of the room, and all that fancy jazz. Now it lets you swap through stuff very quickly, and it'll let you see what room isn't owned, so you can maybe give it an owner. Like if it's a bedroom with a bed and a chest and all that, and no one's in it, no one lives in it, you can set a dwarf who might not have a room to it, and voila, he has a new room, and you have a room that's not wasting space. Moving on, we also have T for view items in buildings. Goes hand in hand with the view rooms in buildings. Not really too useful for a lot of stuff, but it can be really nice in and of itself. So let's say we hit T and then we move over the wagon. It shows us all the stuff that's in the wagon and what the wagon's made of, which is what the B stands for. The wagon's made of 3 oak. It also has a bunch of wine barrels and coke and bituminous coal and meat barrels and plant barrels and more wine barrels, more wine, stuff like that. We can also remove the building from here, dump stuff out of the wagon, stuff like that. Works kind of in the same respect if you use it on a chest, like tell them to bring stuff out of the chest, remove the chest, all that stuff. Now the next one is V for view units. When you hit V, it's similar to the K button, but with more in-depth and only working on, as its name implies, units. What this is good for is we hit V and it does not go straight under your cursor but goes to the closest unit to your cursor. So we hit V, the closest unit to our cursor is Udir Gilameth, our metalsmith. He doesn't currently have a job. That's what the yellow text stands for. The yellow text stands for what he's currently doing, and he doesn't have a job yet. So he has no job. He's a competent miner, a competent weaponsmith, and a skilled armorsmith. By the way, this isn't a set I made up. This is just something that I picked just to show this off. So that's what he's good at. That's his general stuff. What he has in his inventory is a lot of shit. He's got stuff on his lower body, upper body, all that. You can read through it on your own. It's not important. His preferences, what he does as his job, and his work dogs. Labor, I'll explain an easier way to do that. I'm not going to show you how to do that in the game because it takes way too long and it's too complicated. And there's a better program that comes with the Lazy Noob Pack that you will be using, and I say you will be using because you're an idiot if you don't, to make things easier. W. This menu right here kind of gets overshadowed a little bit by another menu I'm about to show you. Basically gives you a quick synopsis of his health. White just means it's okay, nothing's wrong. But if it's yellow or red, yellow means it's injured, red means it's gone. I mean, if he has a red left foot, he has no left foot. Yeah. And then Z gives us a little bit more into him. We can see his relationships here, his thoughts and preferences, and there's a lot of it. There's always a lot under this menu. And this is usually what you'll be able to see. This is what overshadows the last one, because if they have anything wrong with them, anything missing, any scars, anything at all, it will be under this menu. She is very fat. Her hair is straight. Her very long hair is tied in a ponytail. It gives an insane amount of information, and it's actually very useful. You can use this information to find out who would be best suited for what. If somebody is a very quick learner and likes books, likes to do sit-down work, they'd be a good noble. Or if they like to work outside a lot, they like trees, they like the sun, they'd be a good woodcutter. You can kind of infer on that one kind of what they'd like, because this is not set in stone. This is different for every dwarf. Now obviously some stuff is going to overlap, but still. Her hair is sepia. She occasionally overindulges. She isn't, well, she's fat, so I did believe that. She isn't given the flights of fancy. All sorts of stuff. She grumbles she likes working outdoors and grumbles only mildly at inclement weather, so she wouldn't mind working outside. But she needs alcohol to get through the working day. All dwarves are like that. She whispers when she's nervous. I don't see where that would matter to anything. But if you're better at inferring character traits than I am, that might mean something to you. She doesn't go out of her way to do more work than necessary. Probably shouldn't put her in a situation where doing a lot more work than necessary is good. Just put her in a job that just needs what needs to be done. Having her as a crafting job would do terrible because she wouldn't do anything. Now we're getting off track, but that just is her general info. This one dwarf. Now every dwarf you have will have this menu. We go over to this one, hit Z, Enter for thoughts and preferences. It's even more info. Now, if you really want the best dwarf for whatever job you can find, this is the menu you will have to go through every time. If you really want the best and you're willing to put that extra effort in it. Now, we can also go to this menu on dogs and horses and everything else, but it's not as detailed because they're not as high thinking as the dwarves. They don't have as many preferences or anything really. So that's not as important. So we went through basically everything on that first list besides nobles and administrators, which we don't have any yet, but we can acquire some and elect some. So by default, the person with the best leadership, usually the person that you make a doctor, is going to be the expedition leader. Now from here you can also make a militia commander with the military, sheriff, manager. Sheriff never found much of a use for. Chief medical dwarf, your best doctor was good there. And the bookkeeper. The bookkeeper is the one who writes down all the little numbers under the Z key for status to give you more information about what you have. Now back to the noble screen real quick. A broker is the person who trades with caravans when they come. Having somebody who usually would be your expedition leader, because the expedition leader is the one who talks to the other dwarves the most and usually would get the skills necessary to trade best. Not always, and you're probably going to have to look for the best dwarf through the menus or through the dwarf therapist, which I'm going to show you here in a minute, to figure out who's best for that. Now, that was the N for nobles and administrators, and then we go to the Z for status. Again, I kind of showed this off already real quick in a little bit of excitement. This is the menu that shows you everything you have. It's not specific because we don't have a bookkeeper to tell us what is specific. And because dwarves can't really count any higher than 10, it's not really going to have anything not in a multiple of 10. So we have 30-ish meat, 50-ish plants, 80-ish drinks maybe? Maybe? Now also from this menu, we go to animals. What we have, hold on, I think I hit the wrong one. I hit stocked. Animals. What animals we have and which ones we can slaughter. All our dogs that we started out with are work animals. Now we can slaughter them. We can be like, yep, you're going to kill this one. Or horses, which are unavailable at the time, or the cats, which are... Now cats are a different story because if they have an owner, you cannot kill them. But if they don't have an owner, they're free to slaughter. Now, I'm not going to slaughter any of these because I don't want to, but you can with just about any animal you have, unless it has an owner or it's unavailable. Now we can also go to kitchen, which shows us what we can cook and what we are telling them to cook. Usually by default, you won't have to be in this menu. At least this part of the menu, because by default all this stuff usually works right. Now if you by chance see something that's not working, you can go through this menu and find it and find out why. Like if for some weird reason cow meat isn't set to be cooked, which is what red means, and then you have a bunch of cow meat stocked up and you're like, why isn't this being cooked? And then you can go to this menu and see, oh, that's why, and you can toggle it to be cooked. Now obviously you can't brew cow meat, but if plump helmets aren't being brewed and you want them to be brewed, you can. The next one is stone. This is where you can set what stone is used in regular stuff. Like when you get a mason and you tell him to build tables, he will not use economic stone to build that table. And economic stone by default is stuff like iron and gold and silver and bismuth and steel and platinum, stuff that's important that's really important to basically not use. Just by default, he will not use that for general purposes. So that's what that's for. Now you can set that, like if you want a specifically made chair, if you want your dwarf to specifically go after a certain item to make something out of, you can change all the statuses in here and say you're only allowed to use this stone, and that's all he'll use. That will be the only stone he'll use, and that's all you'll have made anything out of. Is that good or bad? It depends on you. Now obviously this comes in handy if you play long enough and find out that you need nobles who will often request a certain thing, and you need to build a certain thing, you often don't have such control over your dwarves, but through this menu you can. Next one, and the final one, is stocks. This is a more detailed menu of the main part. This goes through all your items, still not very specific unless it's under 10. And even here it's like, hey, you have this, this, and this, and this. Good. We have none of this stuff. We have 1 bar of Coke and 10 bitmus coal. Ooh. Ooh. 20 bucket, more barrels. Ooh. Ooh, barrels. But yeah, this just shows you a specific list of what you have. Now if you have a once you get a lot of stuff, this menu becomes more important because you can go through a lot of stuff very quickly through this menu. Now, this doesn't become handy even with a lot of stuff unless you have a bookkeeper to tell you what you do have, but that's besides the point. So that's all the stuff on that first line, A through Z. Now we also have R for reports. Well, we have no reports yet, but that's where you'd go to see where your dwarves had fought and where they've been fighting. Now, if your dwarf fights a badger boar and he might lose a thumb, and you would be like, why did he lose that thumb? You can go to reports and see where he battled the badger boar, and be like, oh, the badger boar bit off his thumb at this part of the battle, which is good. O is for set orders. Now, this is a bit of a more complicated menu that I don't think would be used often. That I don't use often, unless it's in weirder situations where something's just not working. By default, this all works fine. But if something happens, or you want your dwarves to do something specifically different, you can change it from here. Now, by default, your dwarves will gather animals, gather food, furniture, bodies, and all that if they have the hauling labors enabled properly, which I'll show you about in a minute. By default, with these. Now with refuse is a bit of a different thing, and with each of these letters you can switch them on and off, except refuse. Refuse has a different menu under it. When we go to refuse, this will show basically what your dwarves will save or ignore when it comes to refuse. By default, if something's outside your fort or not in an area where they often go, it will be considered outside, and they will not gather refuse from that area. And this can be a good or a bad thing, because if it's an area that the refuse can gather miasma, which is where it decomposes and releases the poisonous smoke, it could affect your dwarves negatively, even though it's not considered something they should touch. So you could set ignore refuse, dwarves gather refuse from outside, ignore vermin remains don't emit miasma. No, you want to clean it up even more. Now they'll gather vermin remains and put it in your stockpile, your trash, wherever you have it set to go. And they'll still save the corpses and all that. And so you can be like, I do not want the corpses saved. Dump corpses, and dump the skulls, and dump the bones, and the shells, and the skins, and the hair and wool, and the other stuff. But that's a menu that you have to decide on your own and how clean you want your map to be. Smaller maps don't have to worry about this as much because your dwarves will probably catch it all anyway. But on a larger map, or if you're building outside, you'll have to tweak this menu just a bit for your playstyle by default. Now, as you can see, we can say ignore animals or ignore food and bodies, which is dumb. I don't know why you do that, but still you can from this menu. Gives you a little bit more control of your dwarves. Not anything that's necessary, but it can be helpful. Next is jobs list. This tells you what dwarves your jobs currently have. What jobs your dwarves currently have. The ones we have now don't have any jobs. Go figure. Now that menu can go a little bit more in depth if you have a manager, which is a noble you can get later on. Sort of similar to the status menu, can't really be seen much with until you have a bookkeeper. This one can't be expanded on until you have a manager, and a manager from this menu would let you change and tell your dwarves what to do more directly. Important? Yes. Necessary? Not quite. S is for squads, which go hand in hand with military. Squads are little sets of 10 dwarves or less that you gather together as a group that you command as one, or individually, but usually as one. Why would you command them? That's dumb. And from here you can tell, here is where you could usually tell your dwarves to go here to do this, and I will be making a separate video on the military, which needs its own later. Not something you need now, but still. I for zones is a very important, very underrated menu. You won't be spending a lot of time in it, but when you do set up the stuff with this menu, it is always important. Always. And I'll be showing you what to do with that once we get done explaining all these. And H is for hotkeys, which you can set up very specific stuff, like F1 zooms in on your home area. See, F1, like we move over here. Wait, where'd my wagon and all my dwarves go? I don't know where it goes. F1, you're back here. Now you can set up a bunch of these. This is something I can't tell you what to do with. This is something you have to do on your own. But hey, you can make whatever hotkeys you want, which is good. Escape is for options. Figured that out. Question mark is for help. Now this can help you beyond what I can do. What I tried to do is cover what isn't directly given in this, and this isn't always straightforward about what it tells you. Now the icons will help you. Dwarves and professions, like this can be very, very helpful in what you can get, but that's more in terms of stuff that I can't really show you myself anyway. So we'll move on from that. You can I highly suggest that if you don't really like listening to me, or you lost somewhere, or whatever else, that you explore this menu in full, just for a little bit more information. In movies, I've never done much with this. You can record this directly, but I like my recording software better. Not really important towards the game. And the D is for depot access, which we don't have a trading depot yet, and that's for trading, and that's something I'll also be explaining probably in the military video. I might combine the two, because I know the military is going to take a while, and the caravans are going to take a while, but we'll see how that goes. But will be in its own video. Now then, we're going to go back and we're going to explain a little bit more in depth about specific keys that need the explanation from the start, just so we know what's going on with them. Announcements I'm not going to be going in some of the ones that don't really need explanations, like announcements, civilizations, look around, points, routes. No, we don't really need any more information about that. What we do need information about is B for buildings, and D for designations, and P for stockpiles. Those three are big ones that you need to know about, and I for zones. Can't forget about zones. As I said, they're very important, very underrated, and even I forgot about it there for a second. So the first one we're going to do, it sounds like a weird way to do it, but the first one we're going to do is actually D for designations. This one's one that you need a little bit more information on to start with than the actual buildings. So we can go D for designations. We have a lot of stuff here. Mining, channeling, ramps, stairways, chop down trees, gathered plants, all of that. All of that here in this menu. Very important. Lots of stuff in this. Lots of stuff to tell your dwarves to do. Now we're going to start from the top. D for designations, and then D for mine. There's no real moniker or anything that you can use to remember a lot of these keys. You're just going to have to do it on your own, because there's no way to think, D, mining, gotcha. It's just something you have to, you'll get it after time, with time, trust me. So D for designations, then D for mine. That's what you use to tell your dwarves what to mine. Now we started over kind of near this area right here, and let me explain a little bit more about this area too before I get into this. As you can see, the game is 2D, and it starts on one Z plane at a time, and the little up arrows are ramps or hills that lead up to the next one up here. And as you can see the other one down below it. In the black area on the inside is stuff inside the ground we haven't explored and we can't see, while the red is, let's see what this red is, it's clay walls that we can see on the outside. So as we can go up and down, there's multiple Z levels, multiple, basically just ground levels. If you can think like it's a contour map, it basically, this area is like a hill going upwards. So now that we understand that, we can look from our dwarf's perspective. He's looking at basically a wall right there. So what we need to do is we need to go for D for designations and then mine, and then we can tell him with the arrow keys and the cursor combined, we can hit enter once, move over, hit enter again, and that area that had just turned highlighted brown is now designated to be mined out. So let's watch our dwarves. The two little dwarves are going to mine this area out. Basically removing the walls, letting us see a little bit further into it, and this will be considered inside. We can grow plants in here because it's on the soil. We can do all sorts of stuff in here now that it's mined out. Go for D for designations again, and we're going to mine another area mined out, just as easy. And so here we go, another hallway. Dwarves mining it out, pure, simple, sweet, done. Now they can only mine out what hasn't already been mined out. You can't mine the air. You can't be like, let's go over here and mine all this out. No, you can only mine in the ground. There's other things made for that. Now, the second one on here is H for channels. This one's a bit confusing if you don't know what it's for. So let's remove this. X is for remove designation. So if you ever start mining something and they haven't done it yet and you want to remove it, X is the go-to key. I'll explain that now because I'm using it now. The second one is H for channel. Channel digs down without putting a staircase, but it does have a ramp leading back up. So if we channel that area out, we're going to watch them dig up to it a little bit, and then they're going to dig down. Dig down, see? The little down arrow, and then they're here. So we can have them be like, okay, now continue digging this way. Interrupted by buzzard. See, here we go. Let's go to A for view announcements. Hey, our siege engineer cancels fishing. Interrupted by buzzard. We're at over here. Where's the buzzard? Who the fuck knows? It's flying. Who cares? Now our dwarves dug out this little path. They dug down, and then they're continuing digging on in this direction. Could we tell them to go in another direction? Yes, we could, but we'll do that later. Simple, sweet, easy, but not effective for going up and down many flights. You can only channel down once, and that's all that buzzard flying around. You can only channel down once before it stops being effective for going down because, well, it's not really anything important. For your dwarves to get the most flexibility they can, you're going to want to build stairways. So to start with, we're going to go to J, U, and I. J is for down, U is for up, and I is for up and down combined. You almost always have to start with the downwards into any of the others to get anywhere. And the upwards one isn't really necessary, but for aesthetics it is. So we're going to start out, we're going to hit J, and Z, which I skipped, is to remove these, and by the way. So we're going to go to J for downwards, we're going to put it over here, and we're going to put a 2x2 area of it. And so we're going to watch our little miner dwarves, they're going to run up in here, start mining this out. See, now they dug a staircase down. They didn't have anything to dig to, but they did detect what's below it. So we're going to go back to D for designations, and we're going to go to I for up and down staircase and make it there. It's just going to look like X's. We're going to go down another level, make some more. Then we're going to go to R for upward, no, R, my bad. We're going to go to U for upward staircase, and then we're going to build those here. And we're going to watch them dig down. They're going to go back. We're going to look down, see, when it starts to flashing yellow like that, damp stone, we've hit the aquifer. That was really quickly, actually. Yes, I know, we've hit the aquifer. Aquifer is the layer in the stone or dirt that contains an infinite amount of water and becomes a real bitch to get past. This will get its own video later on how to get past. And now they dug down. Staircases staircases are much better than a channel to go up and down, because you can go up and down from the one area without having to dig around them very quickly. You can have, if there's nothing in the way, you can have an up and down staircase going 50, 60, 70 levels No interruptions that your dwarves can at any point get off of. No harm, no foul, onto whatever level they want. So there we go. So for D for designations, we've explained mining, channeling, staircases, ramps. I think you can understand the point of ramps. These over here are considered ramps and let you go up a staircase. Now you have to dig an up ramp out of another material, so we'd have to go down to up ramp and set it here. Now our minor dwarves are what are going to do most of the different stuff, so he basically did that. It's similar to channeling, but from below, not above. Helpful? Yes. Necessary? Not as much as stairways. Now that's just me talking. You could find many uses for it. But me personally, I do not. Now the next couple are pretty simple, and you could probably discover what they do on their own. Chop down trees. I don't think you need me to tell you, but I'll just explain it real quick. It basically defines what you want your dwarves to sign out. If you move your cursor over one and double click on it, double hit enter on it, your dwarves will chop down that one tree. They'll mine a tree. They'll chop down the one tree. But if you go to a corner of an area, hit enter, and go to a different corner and hit enter again, everything inside that square will be chopped down by your lumberjack when he gets to it. The next one is gather plants. The little shrubs you see aren't always shrubs. They can be strawberry plants or wheat, whatever they might be. Can't really tell with the look around, but your herbalist dwarf will be able to tell. Works the same way as chop down trees. You can select the big area and he'll gather all those plants, or if you just want one specific one, double hit enter on it and you've gathered it. Next one is smooth stone. Smooth stone is something that increases the value of a wall of stone. Now, as you dig down, most of the walls that you'll run into will be rough because you've just dug it out. And this will have to be something I'll show off in a minute. And once you smooth it, your dwarves like it a little bit more. It's not as tough to walk on, and it increases the value of a room should it be inside of it. And that's usually what you use it for. Engraving a stone, similar to smoothing a stone, except they kind of just carve stuff on it. It can be anything. It could be cheese, it could be a monster, it could be a demon, it could be a centaur. It could be God itself that they engrave on it. But they'll do it, and it will make that wall really valuable. But it has to be smooth first. Now, the next one is a carved fortification. A fortification is something your dwarves can shoot through, and it's also a wall that acts like a wall that water and other liquids can flow through. It can also be seen through and stuff like that, but that's besides the point. So basically, you can carve out into your fort a long hallway, make that all fortifications, and your archer dwarves can shoot through it at any enemy who's passing by. Now, mind you, enemies can shoot back through it, but it still limits the amount of interaction that your two armies can get amongst each other, especially if you're very confident about your archer's abilities. And you can make a really tight tower, carve a bunch of fortifications in it, and then just watch as your archer dwarves start picking off everything within a 50-mile radius. Now, remove designations is, as I explained earlier, you set a bunch of stuff to be mined out, you want that undone, X, simple. Now, remove construction is in use in conjunction with buildings. If you make a wall that you don't want anymore, under the buildings tool, you can go here to remove construction to remove it. Simple? Good. Now, the next one is set building and item properties. This one's a bit more complicated because it varies from building to building. So we're going to go to it for B for buildings. No, on D for designations, then B for building and item properties. Now, as you can see, we don't really have much to work with except for reclaim, forbid, melt, and dump. Dump is what you use in combination with zones. You can set a zone as a garbage dump, and anything you set to be dumped will be moved into that. Not too hard. And then it works in the same way as chopping down trees. If you have a bunch of stuff you want dumped, hit enter in one corner, enter in the other corner, and everything inside of it will be moved. Hide and unhide. Hide and unhide doesn't remove and add stuff, it just keeps it from being seen by you. Your dwarves will still see it, the game will still technically see it, but it'll just be hidden from your view. Good to remember, because if you do that and you forget you put something there, and then you try to build something over it and there's a bunch of stone lying there, your dwarves are going to have to move it and it's going to take more time, and you're going to wonder why that's happening. Now, reclaim and forbid. Reclaim is where you get something that's not yours. If you get into a war and you kill a bunch of people, you have to claim their inventory. You have to go to their body and claim their stuff. But with this menu, you can claim a large group of people's stuff at the same time. In the same way we cut down the trees, enter in one corner and the other, and everything inside of it's yours. Forbid works in the opposite manner, which a bunch of your people die, but you don't want your people going to pick up their stuff. You can forbid it to keep them from going there. Why is that useful? Well, if it's in the middle of a battlefield and suddenly the old grandma who's missing her arms and her legs and is crawling around with her teeth is trying to go out there to get a sock off her son, which she made herself, and she wants it back so she can use it as a tea cozy, you can forbid it so she'll go back inside and wait till the war's over. Now you have to reclaim it later, but it can hold on to that for a while. And melt item is if you have a metallic anything, you can set it to be melted for later when your forges get set up, and as soon as they do, they'll bring it in there, melt it down, get whatever materials it was made out of, and everything's A-O-fucking-K. And that, I think, finishes off everything but the set traffic areas. And traffic areas are weird. Let's go to O for traffic areas. Now, the cost isn't implemented yet, so that's not something you necessarily have to worry about. But the other stuff is semi-important. With high, normal, and low, and restricted, you can set areas that your dwarves will prefer to go to. Now, usually your dwarves will prefer the most direct route, but you can actually detour them around it by setting the normally most direct route to restricted, and your dwarves will find another path around it. Is it useful? Situational. I've had situations where I did not want them to go down an area because it was getting flooded, and if they had went down there, it would have been fine getting in, but getting out would have been the problem. So I restricted the area, made them go around and dig around the area, and everything was fine. It's situational and you have to find your own use for it, but it's there should the need arise. And that's what most of these are. Most of the tools aren't necessary all the time, and you have to find a use for them 9 times out of 10. Now that we've covered designations, which shouldn't be too hard to understand, mining, chopping down trees, all that should be fine, should be easy to go with. Next one's a little bit more complicated, and it is B for buildings, and there is a lot. There is a lot in this menu, and I can't explain each one, but I will be able to give a quick overview of what everything is. In this menu, you can make armor stands, beds, seats, burial receptacles, coffins, doors, floodgates, floor hatches, wall grates, floor grates, vertical bars, floor bars, cabinets, containers, kennels, farm plots, weapon racks, statues, slabs, tables, paved roads, dirt roads, bridges, wells, siege engines, workshops, furnaces, glass window, gym windows, wall, floors, and stairs, trade depots, traps, levers, machine components, supports, animal traps, restraints, cages, archery targets, traction benches, nest boxes, and hives. Now there's a catch to this that needs to be explained. Let us go back to the top. An armor stand. Let's build an armor stand. You need an armor stand. What does that mean? Here's what it means. You have to make an armor stand in a different building menu option. So from here, we'll use the star key on the number pad. Plus and minus make you go down 1. Star and the division key make you go up and down a whole page at a time. From the second menu here, we'll see something called workshops. Workshops are where you actually make the stuff. You have leather workshops, all sorts of stuff. I'm not going to go into a big list of it, but there's a lot here. So just for testing's sake, we'll go to a carpenter's workshop, and we will place it right here. And we'll build it out of coke, who cares? Now our dwarves are going to go build it. It'll take them a second to get to it, so yeah, he goes over there, he builds it. Very good. Now that we have that built, Let me take a sidetrack and go to the Q menu. Now it's closest to it. We can add new tasks, and we can make all sorts of stuff here. And from this menu, we can be like, construct a bed. And once we make the bed, we can go to the building menu to place the bed once we actually get it. It's kind of a complicated and it's kind of a runaround, but it's how you have to do things. And it becomes a little bit more easier and less complicated and asinine as time goes on. Now obviously you're going to have a lot of workshops you're going to go through, and a lot of things that don't necessarily follow by this rule. So if we go back to B for buildings, and then I just know the command by heart, plus it's Shift C, which is for walls, stairs, and stuff like that. This is similar to the D for designations, where you could make up and down staircases, but this makes them without having to dig them out. You can set up a up staircase right here, no anywhere you want, to be built from scratch without having to build it in another menu. Now obviously they're going to have to bring the materials, and we don't have those necessarily yet, but still. There's a lot in this menu, and there's a lot that has to be explained on the spot when it's being used for it to make sense. Like, I can't tell you exactly what you can do with a wall grade or a floor grade and all that sort of stuff, but I'm pretty sure you can figure out what a farm plot would be good for. You basically go to P, that's another different one, so we go to P for farm plot, and we can place it wherever we want, similar to the workshop. So let's place it in here. We can use U, M, K, and H to change the size of this plot to make it a long plot, a long little farm plot, right there. And then when our farmer figures out we told him to do that, he'll go set this up and it can be farmed on. Good, simple, none too difficult. Although there's a lot in that menu that can be seen. There our farmer goes, he's going to make that a farm plot. Not a good place to do it, just for me to explain it right now. Now the last menu that I really want to show, well the last two, are stockpiles and zones. Stockpile will be the first one I'm showing. Now that we've got our dwarf, now that we've let our dwarf chop down a few trees, you can see he's left behind wood. He's chopped down the trees, but there's still the birch logs just laying around. The reason for that is because there's nowhere he's been told to place them. And because of that, he'll just leave them there. They'll all leave them there. So we'll go to P for stockpiles, and then we'll hit W for wood. Now we'll do this similar to how we chop down trees. We'll hit enter in one area and enter in another, and it sets up a little chain-linked looking area that, as you can see, the dwarves, they're going to all go pick up the wood, and they're going to place it in this area. Now from the stockpiles menu, you can set up all sorts of different ones. You can even set up custom stockpiles, C and then T, and be like, okay, I want food in this custom stockpile, and stones, and cloth, and whatever else. And you can even separate certain stuff out of being in those stockpiles if you really want. Like you can have a food stockpile, and then you can have specifically a seed stockpile, and this stockpile, and that stockpile, and a platinum stockpile, and a diamond stockpile, and all sorts of different stockpiles that you make specifically for whatever use you have. And see, as he chops down that tree, another dwarf goes and picks up the wood and places it in the stockpile. This is good because it lets you designate where you want stuff to be at. And as I said before, stockpiles also keep stuff in it from getting damaged or weathered, unless it's outside, in which case it still will, or rodents chew through it, or whatever else. But that's minor exceptions that get negated by stuff like cats and whatnot. Stockpiles is not really a hard menu to understand, but it's one that has to be worked with to really get the full benefit from it. The last important one that I'm going to show in this world is I for zones. Now, this one doesn't have anything specific about it until you actually make a zone. So we're going to make a little 10 by 10 zone right here, and it looks like little lines just going through it, and we can set up different zones, different meanings for this zone right here. It can be a water source, a fishing area, a garbage dump, whatever. So let's set up one a little bit more specific. Let's set one over this water supply. We can set it to be a 29 square water source, and a fishing zone, and a pond. It's simple, not bad. Now we can also set up another zone right here, one little area, and set it as a garbage dump. So all the garbage will get that we set to dump from the other menu that we talked about before under D for designations to be set here. But now that we've got this area, we can also specifically set this one to a pen/pasture, which animals need to roam on to get food. Now, dogs, cats being the exception, but all other animals needing this. So we'll set a stray horse, and our two stray horses to this, so that they'll go here, they'll chew on the grass, and they won't starve to death. So let's watch as our dwarves, they've taken the two horses over into that area. They won't leave that area, even though they probably easily could, but they won't. So let's scroll back over this area. We can also set it as a meeting area for our dwarves, a hospital, which self-explanatory. Later on, when you can get a doctor, you can set it as an area where your dwarves will gather sand or gather clay. It all just depends, and it's also something situational that you have to use and figure out how to use on your own and when and where to use it. Now then, these all work together. So let's say you go to B for buildings, W for workshops, and let's say you get a mason's workshop. Right? Well, now that you have your mason's workshop, you need stone. So, I don't think we're going to be able to show this off on this map because of the aquifer. So let's go and wait 1 second. Back to the other map. Alright, now that we're back here, we're going to go to B for buildings, W for workshops, M for a mason's workshop, and we're going to set it to be built right there. And now that we have this little area that's being dug out here, we can go to D for dig, I for up and down staircase, and then we're going to dig down, not quite like that, it's a little bit uneven. And we're going to dig down just a bunch of levels until we hit stone. And once we do, we'll dig out a bunch of stone, do whatever we want to do with it. See, our two miners are going over there, they're going to dig it out. We're going to have a mason who's going to build that back up. And right here we can see as an example of the stockpiles. Damp stone, really aquifer. I thought I didn't have you. Whatever. See, this is an example of a universal stockpile. It's a custom stockpile that I made specifically for this world that everything just gets thrown into. I don't know why they kind of put all the barrels in lines and then the wood randomly. That's just a dwarven thing. What you gonna do? And I also have the little areas right there. And from here we can also set up more zones. We can set up this little zone right here. A little bit too much, but who cares? We'll set it as a N for pen and pasture, and have the two yaks go over there like that. More damp stone. I'll just remove all these. I did not think we had an aquifer here. It's my bad. Anyway, we can go to B for buildings, B for beds. We'll put down another bed over here, and then another bed, and then another bed. Bed. No. Bed. Thank you. And then they'll go and get the beds from the stockpiles that I made from a carpenter workshop, and they're gonna build the bed there. You can also go to B for buildings, and then T for table. Put a table there, put a chair there, and then put another chair there. There we go. These menus all work together and have to be worked together with in unison or in a certain way to have any meaningful effect. Like, I had to use the building menu to make the workshop, and from the workshop, and this is something I'll have to explain later, this is migrant waves. Migrants are something you get over time that expand your fort beyond the standard means of just child production. These guys will usually come with certain skills, certain usually very good skills to help your fort, and they can be anywhere between like a beekeeper to a weaponsmith to a legendary warrior of myth. It just depends on the way. Let's go to, we got one person there, 2 people, 3 people. Nothing too bad. and they'll come over into the fort and they'll start working on stuff, and that's something I'll explain probably in a later video, probably in the next video, now that we've kind of gotten a good understanding of all the menu options that we have here. The next video will actually start getting a lot more into the world and a lot more of the more complicated stuff that we can do. Because through this video, we've already learned about how to set stuff up through the menus. Buildings, zones, stuff like that. We've not learned how to use them in more unique situations, but we've learned how to use them just stock, standard, and fair. By now you probably would be able to find out, well, now that I have an area to put my yaks, they won't starve and they can start chewing on the grass. Good, fine, everything works out. You also were able to set up beds, get beds made, and then you can kind of infer on your own a little bit more about what you can do with these. Build. You can go to the B for building menu, workshops, mason workshop, or carpenter's workshop, and make a door so you can block off this little area right here from having wild animals get in. See? Now you've already figured out something you can do on your own that I didn't have to tell you specifically. Now you have to play around with these menus a lot to really get the most benefit out of them. But you should be able to get a good hold of them now that you know a little bit more about them. Now, as you do get a hold of these menus, your fort will grow. You'll get more dwarves that you have to manage. And you'll probably want to keep them as busy as possible. Now, I'm not keeping mine really busy right now just because this is just for the tutorial's sake. But usually I would be trying to have my dwarves do as much as I could get them to do as possible. Now, overworking them is a little bit too much, and so I would let them go idle every now and then, but not so much that it hurt my production. But that's something you have to decide on your own. How you play, how you work, how you do anything really. Now you won't have to work too hard for it, but it shouldn't be too much of an issue. But we can go to B for buildings again, workshops. Show you something real quick. M for a mason's workshop, which I've already made. Go to Q, and then we'll add tasks. We can make a lot of stuff here. We can make a lot of stuff. But I need to explain a couple little nuances that these menus have that kind of keep them from being a little bit more intuitive. A throne is the same thing as a chair. And you might be wondering what a block is. A block is basically what you turn unusable building materials into to use them as a building material. Now if you find something that you cannot make a wall out of, or cannot make whatever out of, you can turn it into a block and you can use it to make it. Like soap. Soap cannot be used to make a wall. But if you combine the soap into a block, you can use that soap to make a wall. Why would you? Well, fuck if I know. I don't know why you'd ever want to make a soap wall, but that's just a little example that you can use to do it. Floodgates and all that. A weapon rack is where you hold the weapons. A slab. What the fuck's a slab? A slab is similar to a coffin, except they're more exposed. They don't decompose, but it lets your people see them and just kind of just view them. A little bit more memorial. It makes them a little bit more sad to see, but it also makes them happy to see that they're memorialized in such a way. A kern. Kern is, I forgot at this point. I had a brain fart right there. I was about to say a kern is, but I'd forgotten. I don't think it's. You can Google it. It shouldn't be too much of an issue. Weapon rack, table, statues, and all that. Statues aren't really important for anything more than aesthetics. Not for you, but for your dwarves. Dwarves love statues. They love looking at them, especially if they're well made. Now, if they're made of something they're frightened of, they might be a little bit more pissed off. Now, if you have a dwarf who's afraid of bats, and your, mason makes a bat statue, you might not want to put that bat statue up, just to keep that one dwarf who does not like bats from getting pissed off. It can happen. It can fucking happen. I guarantee it. You can have that one dwarf who's scared of something, and your other dwarf will make something of it. But still, I hope this video has helped you understand the menus a little bit better. It's been a bit of a longer video than most that you'd see on YouTube, but still, I hope it's helped you in some way, shape, or form. Next video, I'll start getting a little bit more directly into the dwarves, a little bit into the menus, and a little bit more of the complicated stuff that you can find yourself getting into such as the migration waves we've seen, setting up your dwarves as for bedrooms and stuff like that, and a little bit more in that direction. I hope this video has helped some people, and I will see you guys in the next video. Remember guys, have fun.